welcome to Watching for a Friend, where I watch movies and shows because I love them and let you know whether it's worth watching or not. If you're new here, thank you so much for choosing me. I hope that you enjoy this video and stay till the end. If you're returning, thank you so much for the love and support. I really appreciate it. I also hope you enjoy this video. And I'm really excited to discuss this week's episode. So we're on episode 8, starting to wind down. I'm already getting anxious about episode 10 because I'm like, no, you can't take this away from us. This episode is titled Low Key Happy, and I was happy with this episode. I thought it came at the most opportune time. I needed something to look forward to, and this episode did that for me. So let's go on and get into it. But Low Key Happy was just a quick reaction and synopsis is that I really appreciated this episode, and a little bit of information about it is that it was written by Natasha Rothwell, who plays Kelly on the show. So I was really looking forward to this episode for that reason, and she did not disappoint. She did not disappoint. This is a great episode. This episode was about Issa and Lawrence having a really honest chat, an evening where they spent some time together and they were able to really be honest with each other for the first time in this year that they've been apart. One thing that I will say is that Natasha did such a great job with the storytelling here. This episode was really important for this series because it does move a lot of the plot forward. It moved us into Issa's future, it moved us into Lawrence's future, and it also gave us some of their backstory. So I'll talk a little bit about this, but we'll start at the beginning. Scene 1, we see Lawrence sitting at a bar, and this is something that we got in the trailer for last week. He's sitting at a bar. He is nervously waiting for Issa to show up, and she does. And it's funny because when he's at the bar, you can tell why they're so good for each other friendship wise, because he like pops a mint in his mouth and accidentally chokes on it and then spits it out and it lands on the bar. It was a whole thing. And so you're like, oh, he's equally as like nerdy or awkward as Issa is, even though he's kind of pulled himself together now, so he doesn't look, as scrubbish as he was in the first season, but he's still the same person underneath, and that's kind of like this awkward black guy, which is, ultimately Issa's counterpart. So when Issa walks into the restaurant, she looks stunning. She has on this beautiful red couture blouse looking, she's very high fashion. She falls flat on her face in this restaurant. It is a crowded restaurant too. People come over and try to help her out. Lawrence comes over to help her, and she just lays there on the ground, and she like isn't gonna move. He's like, so you just gonna stay there? And she's like, yep. And so she stays there, and I have been there. Oh my goodness. Every time I've fallen as an adult, I think I take a moment to just, first of all, I take a moment to like thank the Lord that I didn't die or break something. And I think it also takes me a moment to assess if I've broken anything. So I completely relate to that. I always just stay there for a minute because I have fallen in my adult life. I'm clumsy and I'm awkward too. Yeah, so I stay there to assess whether I've been injured, whether I've injured myself. I stay there whether to assess if I'm alive still. And then I just stay there to assess what people's reactions are around me. He eventually gets up, she brushes herself off, and they have some banter. She mentions that she's changed because she changed her drink order from when they were together, and he was like, based on that fall, no, you you ain't changed. And I was like, oh, so this is within the first 5 minutes of this episode. I loved it. It was so much fun. You got to see their friendship. You got to see what makes them so drawn to each other. And I just thought that this was important so that because we were inserted into the worst part of their relationship in season 1, we're starting to see why they could possibly, have worked, why she would have stuck by his side for 5 years and for such a long time when he wasn't at his best. You see what the potential is with the two of them. We also find out in this conversation that he was interviewing up in San Francisco, which is something that I think we all suspected, and there's potential for him to move, that it would be a good way to transition him off of the show. And I still feel very strongly that they will not and should not get back together. The lift ride. So the lift ride was cute, and it gave us some information that we didn't necessarily know. So they got into a lift with an older Black woman who was, you know, just telling them how cute of a couple they were. I hadn't noticed this in the first season. Now I have to go back and watch it. I didn't realize that Issa didn't know that he had bought the wedding ring, or, you know, the engagement ring, because they had, you know, gone and looked at engagement rings together. It never connected in my mind that Issa didn't know that he had bought the engagement ring. So yeah, that was really interesting that he decided to reveal that to her in that lift ride. So that lift ride was just significant for that reason. Other than that, it was just a cute scene to have, because they were like, Issa was annoyed, but they were also both playing along it, so it showed how much they like vibe with each other. Now when they get to the next bar, it is a lot more intimate and they are able to talk, and Lawrence reveals why he'd asked Issa to, you know, hang out with him that night, and it was because he had questions about what would happen if they hadn't broken up. So in the past, they've, you know, generalized and said that for the past 2.5 years in their relationship, Lawrence was without a job. Now it turns out that it got really bad at that year, you know, a year before they broke up. So it sounds like Issa, he had swirled into a crazy depression, and she had been dealing with that for a year before we met them. And that was really important because we didn't really know what he was up to prior to that. So it was a 5-year relationship. Out of that 5 years, 2, she was supporting him, and the 1, he was really, like, they weren't communicating. Their relationship was in shambles for a whole year before she cheated on him with Daniel, and he felt comfortable enough to ask her about Daniel, and she was able to explain that Daniel was just giving her the attention that she was seeking from him. And I love that they were able to have a really mature conversation with each other about what happened in their relationship, and they weren't blaming each other. They were both owning their part in it, and it was just mature. So and that again shows this growth that this entire episode was about. The conversation inside the restaurant, I feel like, got them a lot closer. It made them understand each other. I think they both got closure from that conversation. Now when they leave the restaurant, they are talking, and then you hear brah brah. And I think everybody knew who it was, and then Issa's like, please don't, please don't. And it's TSA Bay, and I'm really glad they brought him back. They're so good with the writing in this way, like making sure they fold in these characters. And so he shows up at the wrong time, and he has a friend named Mazda. She looks like an Instagram girl. And they have their little conversation, and you could tell the entire time Lawrence is just holding back laughter, like, oh man. And so I thought that scene was hilarious. And I loved that Lawrence ended up teasing Issa, like pretending he was gonna leave her. And then he goes down the street and he's like, blah, blah. Loved that. I was like, this is such a good episode. It was so much fun. And then they go to this the art walk. I love the conversation where they were like rhyming different words to Born Identity. And they were just doing this like play on words. It was so cute. And it just, again, shows why they have such great chemistry. So again, this entire episode is about them learning about who each of them is now that they've grown so much. independent from their mutual relationship. It's just like, you know, an ex in real life. You're like, I don't even know where this person lives. It turns out that they live within walking distance of each other. Lawrence ends up inviting Issa up to his apartment to see it, and she sees the couch that they bought together in season 1 and acknowledges like, it looks good in here. Throughout the episode, he's seen texting Condola a little bit here and there, and I was just like, compared to Issa, Condola's such a wet blanket. He's like texting with her, and they're supposed to meet up at some point, and he ends up calling her because Issa goes to the bathroom. But he ends up calling Condola while Issa's in the restroom, in the bathroom, and says, okay, so like we'll meet up. Issa ends up overhearing it, and she's like, you know, you make me really happy. Tonight was great. I don't want to leave. And he agrees with her. He's like, yeah, tonight made me really happy. And so they end up, you know, doing grown folk stuff. And I don't know what happened. You know what? The only thing that stressed me out in this scene is they left the Lyft driver out there, and I'm really worried about her score. She can't afford to go any lower. I'm really worried about her score, y'all. That stressed me out. That really stressed me out. But they end up staying. She stays overnight. And the next morning, they're, you know, still really happy. They just seemed very much at peace with wherever it goes. And that's promising. My prediction still stands. I do not think that they will get back together. I don't think that that would be wise for either of them, especially with the amount of growth that they've experienced separate from each other. I know a lot of people want to see them together, but I don't want to see them together at all. I just want them to like be friends, and I want her to find somebody else. He could go find whoever he wants. If he wants Condola, yeah. He can do better than Condola. He can. So those are my thoughts on this episode. Let me know what you think in the episode about the episode in the comments below. And also I want to say that I got a lot of new followers, so welcome to those of you who are new. And I really do want this to be a community of people that like movies and TV shows, especially if they really like Insecure. Send them my way. Share this with your family and friends, and let them know that I'm here and I'm trying to build this community of people who have a lot of the same interests as I do. So thank you again for all the support, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.